So lately, we've been taking a look at how to use AI in terms of automating production for podcasts. And today we're going to take a look at another use case where we have a podcast and we want to extract the people that are mentioned in the stories of that single episode and the context of those stories, plus the timestamps, because maybe you might want to do some content in the future and you want to know who you're mentioning where. If you're new here, hi, my name is Alex, and here on this channel we talk about anything and everything low code, databases, AI, you freaking name it, we probably do it. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start things off as we usually do with a very, very quick demo. Now, I've already run this once, and as you can see, I've got my sample podcast and I've got my people association status. And yeah, let's just run this one more time so that you can see how this works in principle. Essentially, right now, what the system is doing, it's taking a look at an already existing transcription of the podcast episode, and it's going to pull all the people and their stories and their timestamps in like little packages that you can just give to your producer and they can do what they want with them. But ultimately, bottom line is that ideally what I'm doing here should be done in a little bit of a better fashion where we match the episode, as you can see here, with the person, the timestamp and the context. But for simplicity's sake, we're settling for this, where you can see immediately, if I open this up, that the mentioned person is Barry, last name is Sheen, punch in, punch out timestamp, and the context. Barry Sheen was mentioned as someone who lived down the road from the speaker during a transitional period. The speaker reflects and blah, blah, blah. There's another guy called Jack. Jack is mentioned as a young person and so forth and so forth. Dr. Kevin Louie. You see where I'm going with this. So yeah, having said all of that, let's take a look at how the database is set up. Now, in terms of the database, there's really not much going on. All you really need is just a few fields like the name of the podcast audio, a trigger for starting the process of associating people, and a people association status field, and just a transcription ID. I have other hidden fields here, but they are not really playing any role in what we're trying to do here. Now, having said that, let's just jump into the automation side of things to see how that whole thing works. Automation time. And if you watched any of our automation tutorials, you know that I have a very specific way of how I like to trigger pretty much all automations when it comes to Airtable and make.com. And this is no different. We just have, like I said previously, a very straightforward checkbox, associate people. This is the condition that we need to use in our automation. So go ahead and create a new automation if you're following along. The trigger must be when a record matches conditions, and the condition is associate people is checkbox. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create an action, and that is run a script. And from there, the script is always the same. The only thing that you need to change in this case is this URL that I have up here at the top. And you can get that URL from the make automation. So go ahead and create a new webhook module. Once you've done that, you should get this little webhook address, copy this address to the clipboard and paste it in here. Just replace it with your own. Don't forget to add the record ID input variable name, and of course the value being the Airtable record ID itself, because we want to make sure that when we send the data over to make, we fetch the correct record on which to act upon. So moving forward from that, we have a very straightforward setup here. As you can see, there's nothing much going on. The only difference is that this path over here takes care of audio files that you haven't transcribed in the past. The bottom part basically deals with the cases where we have generated a transcription from an audio file in the past, but we just want to do another run. Essentially, all we have, and I'm just going to take you through the whole thing now, we are just fetching that record as soon as it hits. Over here in the webhook, we just get the record ID from module number 1 and fetch that episode. The next thing is we are basically updating the user to tell the user that, hey, we are actually doing something. And here in the people association status field, I'm just saying, transcribing, and I'm also adding a quick little timestamp so that we know when this transcription actually took place. Now, in the case of when we are doing this for the first time for an audio file, we need to actually create a little router like I have here, and we want to make sure that the transcription ID from Airtable from module number 2 does not exist because we've not processed it in the past. The inverse is true for when we have processed it in the past, the transcription ID exists. Now, in the case that it doesn't exist, here's what we need to remember. We have the audio URL where I'm basically mapping the audio URL from the attached podcast audio from my record from module number 2. By the way, I'm using assembly.ai for the transcriptions. I've tried a bunch of them. I've tried Whisper, I've tried DeepGram. I really like the way that assembly works and the simplicity of the whole thing, so I highly recommend it. It's also super cheap, so loads going for it. Anyway, audio URL, map this in. The next thing is to set the speech model to best. From there, there's 2 more parameters that you need to be aware of. We have chapters and entity detection. We might use them, we might not. I'm just turning them on. From there, we also want this particular setting to be on. Wait until transcript is ready. If you don't see it, just make sure that you turn on advanced settings. That's how that particular setting comes up. That's it in terms of the initial transcription. Then we want to fetch the SRT data. Now, you don't have to do this way. I'm actually making an API call. You don't have to do it. There is a whole standard thing. I only realized later that this was available. Get subtitles for a transcript. You can use this module, or you can do it like I have, essentially fetching the whole thing via an API call. This is the URL. Don't forget to map the transcription ID from module 75. Method is get. The rest of it is as is. Fairly standard stuff. Next thing, again, we are just letting the user know that things are progressing. And all I'm doing here is sending the user another message in that same field to say that, hey, working AI magic, and other timestamp. Basically, super straightforward, nothing else. I actually believe that maybe I am adding the ID here. Let me check. No, I'm not, but I am adding the SRT body in the SRT transcript field. I'm not using it anywhere else, but I'm adding it anyway. I have a few other video ideas, so this is just an artifact from that. But anyway, so now we're going to move on to actually the prompts and the AI thing that I've set up. Super straightforward. I'm using the create a chat completion method, and the model is GPT-4o. It's okay. It's not too bad. Not my favorite, but it works. First, we have a system message that looks something like this. Reels producer, yada, yada, yada. Then we have our user role where I'm giving it the body, giving it the desired formatting, mention person first name, last name, and so forth. And this is my quick little task that I'm giving it. Please analyze the provided SRT file, blah, 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 punch in, punch out, ignore, and do not add any conversational language. Simple stuff. My tokens are set to 0, my temperature is at 0.2. That's basically it. Nothing else, no trickery involved at all. Then we have update episode. Basically, we're just mapping some of the data that we've collected from the previous modules back into the episode. So we get the transcription ID being in place. We also get the response from ChatGPT. We're just putting that into people association status. I'm also adding the transcript back from assembly into Airtable. Again, just some video ideas. You don't have to do this. But the most important thing is, of course, making sure that you map the response. And of course, needless to say, you need to map the record ID correctly, right? So you update the correct episode. That's basically it. There's not much else to it. The bottom 4 modules are exactly the same as these 4 modules up here. So there's no point in me even explaining what these do. They do exactly the same thing. It's only that when we fetch the SRT data, we are actually tapping into the transcription ID from Airtable because we stored it some other time when we originally ran the transcription. So yeah, that's the only real different thing about the whole thing. So yeah, that's basically it in terms of the automation. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little tutorial. Let me know down in the comments below if you would like me to take this a little bit further and develop it properly within Airtable with like linked tables and all of that, would be happy to do so, but let me know if you want me to explore this little option. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.